Hey, you're watching AfterBuzz TV, Legends of Tomorrow After Show. On this episode, we're breaking down Season 1, Episode 13, Leviathan. We're going to be talking about giant robot fights. We're talking about Rory and Kendra doing a little blacksmithing. And then we've got the writer of that episode, Sarah Nicole Jones, right here in studio. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Look at that. Madonna bringing us in here. Yeah. Daddy issues. See how cool Sarah Nicole Jones is? Already getting into the sweet dancing that we always like to do at the opening of the Legends of Tomorrow After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. Hey, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. We have on the other side of the panel there, we've got Mr. Dave Child.
Hi, you can find me at Mr. Dave Child on Twitter and Instagram.
And down at the end of the table, we've got Lacretia Lyon.
And you can find me at LACRETIALYON anywhere on the internet, since there is only one.
Now, Lex Michael, who's usually here, is kicking himself, I know, because he had to miss this week and next week. But we traded up. This is a trade-up situation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a writer and producer right here. She's worked on shows like Longmire, Forever, and currently is a writer and producer on Legends of Tomorrow. In fact, wrote the very episode we'll be breaking down tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Sarah Nicole Jones.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Very happy to be here.
Two in the studio, so it's a round of applause.
It's rousing. It just feeds my soul. I'm going to keep that deep forever.
Good.
So, there we go. The quiet applause.
There we go. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, live studio audience. They just woke up. All right.
Now, before we get into this episode specifically, let's just talk a little bit about your involvement with Legends of Tomorrow. If that's all right.
Yeah.
So how did you get brought onto the show?
I actually got brought onto the show by the showrunner, Phil Klemmer, and we had previously worked together on the show Forever that was on ABC last season, and Phil is just an amazing guy. He was like a huge mentor to me when I was on that show, and when Forever was winding down, we weren't really sure kind of the fate of it, of like if it was going to come back or not. And you kind of have to go on staffing meetings if you're, a writer, producer, and it's the Couch and Bottled Water tour. And I had met on a bunch of different shows, and there were 2 shows vying for me. And literally at 0 hour, when the phone was getting picked up to call my manager, I get an incoming call from Phil Klemmer. It's like, "Hey, buddy, what you doing?" Like, not a whole hell of a lot, Phil. "You want to be a producer on my new show?" I was like, "All right, let's do this." He was like, "Superheroes, Victor Garber, Wentworth Miller, speaking your language. Keep going. I'm feeling better about this." And and it was just kind of a quick yes from there, because I had always loved superheroes. I had read a lot of comics as a kid, but it was kind of something that I always kind of kept in the background. And then it was a nice muscle to flex, and it was completely uncharted territory for everyone involved, like Berlanti and that whole camp. And they just came in and said, "Do what you do, and we'll go from there." So that was kind of it was a really quick conversation, and that's how I joined the team.
That's awesome, because certainly the Berlanti universe kind of started small with Arrow, and then we introduced Flash. We kind of expanded the scope of what the heroes could do in that kind of universe. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we jump it up. We've had guest stars occasionally. We see Firestorm and Adam introduced. But finally to do a series where you're going to take all these heroes and a couple villains, combine them all together, it seems very ambitious in scope. At the beginning, were you guys like, "Man, I don't know, can we really tackle this? Is this too much for us to handle?"
Oh, it's freaking bonkers. Like, we still say it. Like, we're 13 episodes in, and even as we've been in the room talking about second season, this was a show that we had no roadmap at all. No other show was doing what we did in terms of, VFX, having that many superheroes on one screen, having that many people with powers on screen. Right. And we felt like we owed a lot to the fans of Arrow and Flash, because that's where a lot of those characters were established. And to tackle that, and also tackle setting up people like Rip Hunter, setting up people that like the fans who read comic books would love but had never seen on screens before, it's a massive undertaking. And to pull off what we did every week, we're super proud of it. I mean, we're still kind of continuing, and there's definitely been some moments where we've learned from things, and we thankfully have like such an amazing fan base, and you guys are part of that tells us where we fall short, where we hit the mark, and we respond to that in kind, hopefully, like with our episodes. So Yeah.
Well, certainly, I think one people, and we've talked about this on the show, is that the cast is so huge and filled with so many interesting characters and talented actors, but you've got to service all of them. And at points you feel like, wow, maybe we added too many characters onto the show, because that's so many to take care of every single episode.
Yeah, there's definitely been a couple times where I'm like, I write a scene that's a 2-page scene, and then I remember that 8 people have to talk,
Right,
and
yeah.
I have to set up like 3 or 4 different storylines.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, go back to the drawing board. Let's see how we do. And, it's, again, figuring out the chemistry of the show. And kind of as we're going into second season, we're really excited because something that we've been toying around with is something that we did early in season 1, which was kind of pairing people off and going off on side missions and making it more about like one person's journey or a pair's journey for the episode. And so we can really dig deep in and, see kind of the transitions that they make, the choices that they make. So that's something that we're working towards, and that's something that first season really helped us to figure out. But very early on, we were definitely like, all right, 8 dudes and gals on a spaceship, and they all got to do something.
Yeah, and
oh my God.
And also they're time traveling too, which is something so simple and not very convoluted at all.
No.
So did you work on the rules of time travel, like what had to happen and how the time travel in this world works?
We kind of did, and there have been no. We had one set in stone rule that we tried to adhere to, which is you can never go back to a time that you yourself took part in.
Right.
So if I am giving this interview right now and something goes terribly wrong, God forbid, I can't go back to 20 minutes before this interview and intervene because I already took part in that. So that was our one governing rule kind of going forward. And we have attached other rules in the process, and some have worked, some have not so much worked. But we try always to stick to that one thing. And, it is daunting, and when you're all sitting there again on a show that has no roadmap whatsoever, you're kind of trying to pull all your rules of time travel that you've always had, be it from Back to the Future, be it from Doctor Who. Like, we've all thrown in the writers' room. It's like, well, on Doctor Who, time just needs to happen sometimes. Like, do you recall a certain episode called Waters of Mars?
Yes.
I think that would work well for us.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of go from there, and it's what works best for our characters always. Like we say, it's just like what showcases the character dynamics, and the rules always kind of come from that. Cool. But that's always been our number one rule.
I would mention the challenge is, say you're Jeff Johns and you're writing the Justice League, and you've got 7 or 8 characters in there. You're dealing maybe with your editor, but otherwise you're pretty much just writing that whole thing without any other influence. But when you're sitting in the writer's room and you've got so many other writers too, everybody's got different opinions on how time travel works exactly. How much of these characters should be focused on, how much Vandal Savage should be focused on. How easy is it to kind of get a consensus, has it been this season, to kind of like, all right, how much we gotta keep going in a certain direction?
Well, we go in the beginning with Phil Klemmer and Marc Guggenheim, who are our chief showrunners, and Greg Berlanti always comes in kind of with his input too, because he's very much involved with the superheroes in this canon, and he loves it so much. So we usually like to generally agree on where our characters are going to start and where they're going to end. And if we have that in mind, then it's kind of like you have the end of an equation, and we just kind of have to figure out how we're going to get there. And sometimes the camp is divided, and when that does happen, you kind of got to do the like, Dad, Phil, Mark, I need you to come in right now and just call in an audible. But, the great thing about all of our writers is we're all really good friends, and we never take anything personal. It's just, let's present both sides of this. Both are good. And if we go one way, you just got to leave it kind of at the door at that, and just say, like, how do we make it work? It's playing word Tetris is what we always call it, word and logic Tetris. Of like, we need to end up here, figure out the pieces that are going to fit to get us there. I don't care how it happens, so long as it does.
Well, and certainly the big bad for this season is Vandal Savage.
Right.
So how much talk went in, like how many episodes we need to focus on Savage specifically? How much are we just going to do? Maybe we'll bring in Kronos, the episode, or the Hunters, or and balancing that out.
Well, we knew that, like, when you have a character like Vandal Savage, you're an immortal madman. There's only so many times you can come up against an immortal bad guy and screw up before it gets ridiculous.
Right.
So, and again, like we saw in this episode of 13 of Leviathan, this was a big episode where we said, okay, what is going to be his Achilles heel? What is the one thing that could bring him down that he never had before? And we said, okay, he has a child. And that is going to be his Achilles heel going into that. But we also looked at just simply, we start with the dynamics of how many episodes do we have Casper Crump for? Like, we have him for, okay, 16 episodes. We got him for 12. All right. What do we have to fill kind of in between that? And we didn't always want it to just be focused on one thing because it's such a big universe in time travel. Like, we had a Time Pirates episode. We have people that are screwing up the timeline. We want a Time Masters episode. And, you know, coming down the line, not to spoil too much that you kind of see in the promos, is like the Time Masters are, you know, going to factor very heavily kind of towards the end. And so we kind of filled in the blanks as much as possible and also figured out, like, when we do want Vandal Savage in an episode, how do we want him? Is he going to actually be the big bad, or is he going to be the power behind the big bad? And from the beginning we said, you know, he was always the one whispering in the ear of dictators and world powers and all of that going forward. So, you know, if we can just have that be the focus and then he's just kind of moving around in the background, that's part of it. You know, like 110 was a lot of him doing that, which was our Perdigaton episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have, like, landmarks you wanted to hit as far as time travel goes? Like, you had that Wild West episode. You have giant robot and tiny robot episodes, and you have a Hitler episode, essentially. Like, whether you should go back in time and kill Hitler. Was that a goal to try and find, like, little tropes of time travel that you can, like, use?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a character board of emotional things we need to hit with certain characters at certain times. Like, we want Sarah to go through this at this time. We want, you know, Rory and Snart, you know, when they had the whole episode, is Snart going to kill him or not? We knew that had to happen, and engineering an episode around that was there. But we also have something called the dream board, which you can write whatever phrase you want on the dream board. And we can find a way to sandwich it into an episode. And it has the most random words you've ever seen in your life. One of them was evil casserole. And then in episode 108, which was another one that I co-wrote with Courtney Norris, was the 1950s episode, which is our monster episode, where Vandal shows up in the door having an evil casserole. And that was actually pitched by one of our writer's assistants, Matt Malla. And it was his dream. And he, like, busted open the door and he's like, let me paint a scene for you. So,
And
we're
Ray
in the
loved it.
50s. We're in the 50s. And we got to go to a barbecue. And then we see Vandal Savage. And he's there holding a casserole. And, like, that was the big giant reveal. And we said, okay, let's base something around that. And so you never know, like, what's going to pull off the board. And again, like tonight's episode, Leviathan, big giant robots. Rock'em Sock'em Robots was on the board.
Really?
And that phrase was just Rock'em Sock'em Robots. And if we could embiggen Ray, and if we could sell people, and if VFX could pull it off, that just became, like, our big set piece at the end, that we said, all right, we need a battle. Rock'em Sock'em Robots, let's do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was actually one of the coolest things I've seen so far in the series. With that whole battle sequence was so cool.
I have a question just because you brought up 108, which is the Hawks.
Yeah.
The Night of the Hawks.
Yeah.
So you got Joe Dante to direct that.
I did have Joe Dante.
Which came first? Because it almost feels so tailored for Joe Dante. So did you write it and then go, we got to get Joe Dante? Or did you have Joe Dante and said, we got to write something for Joe Dante?
It was a beautiful kismet, because originally I was supposed to write that episode to be episode 7, not 8. And when we saw what episode 7 and what episode 8 were doing in the grand scheme, Greg and Phil said, we're actually going to switch them. And then we looked at the board and we said, oh my God, Joe Dante is going to do this episode.
Yeah.
And
the spooky 50s.
Again, like, no plans whatsoever. It literally fell into place. And that dude on set is astounding. I mean, it's everything you you would expect from Joe
I mean,
Dante.
Gremlins. I mean,
I know, and you're trying to sit there, and I'm trying to be like the producer who's sitting there, just like, yes, looking at your budget, looking at your shot list. You directed my childhood.
you ruined my childhood.
How do I do this right now? Like every now and then, you're just like, can you sign my Gremlins poster? Just can you do that? Just for me.
Just right there.
just right there. No. Great guy. And I directed the hell out of that episode. It was so fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, one of the certainly, I think you look at a character evolution through the course of the series, and going in, certainly Snart has been just a fan favorite character.
Oh, my question.
Oh yes, yes.
Yes,
before we get to mine,
I've been dying to know.
This is awesome.
I've been dying to know. Okay,
Go on.
does he base Snart off Eartha Kitt? Is he purposely homaging Eartha Kitt when he does Snart? Do you know?
Whitworth.
This has been my theory from day one.
Here's the thing.
We're gonna find
All
out.
I can say is Wentworth is an extremely smart man.
Yeah.
And he knows exactly what to say and what to do to get an emotion across. Now, I have never asked him if Eartha Kitt was
bet you
his
anything.
inspiration, but if you're getting Eartha Kitt, I can guarantee you Wentworth meant you to.
It's in there somewhere.
It's definitely in
Okay.
there, and I mean, in the 50s episode, because we brought it up, I instantly wanted him to be an FBI kind of gumshoe character, because when I first saw him play Captain Cold on Flash, before I was even a part of Legends, I was like, he just reminded me of like an old school, like Cagney, just kind of like, hey, see, we're gonna go over here.
I
Gotta
thought
twink
you were
this
going to say
character.
old school cats. And I was like, yes.
Or old school, like the first Catwoman ever. We saw the kids.
It feels like he's a cat the entire time. He's just like slinking around. It's great.
It's mesmerizing to watch.
Yeah.
Like even when you're on set, you're just like, more of that. I have no notes. Just
He
keep
shines in this
going.
episode. This
He
is
does.
like
He shines in every episode. Like I'm showing a little. Like I love all of our cast, but just Captain Cold has always been my favorite since I was a kid.
it was good to give him some meat though in this one, because he's good to just say a line and steal the scene. But in this one, he had like scenes.
Yeah,
He
we
had-
had more Snarts. And that's what we've been asking for. And I'm guessing that's how they got you on the show anyway. You said they had you at Wentworth Miller.
They had me. They intrigued me at Victor Garver, but you had my attention at Wentworth Miller, and working with him has been fantastic, and just so much of himself that he puts into it. How much he thinks about every line that he says. Nothing is a throwaway. He's so great to be on set with, and I will say, again, not giving away too much, but be prepared for the next 3 episodes, because they're going to be a whole lot of snarts.
Oh, very nice.
We're getting snarty.
Yes. So, because I certainly felt like Snart was a fan favorite just going into it. I mean, he was so great on The Flash. But you bring along Heatwave, McRory as well. And it's like, okay, yeah, his partner in crime, but hadn't as much of a character development. He's just kind of like the meathead. But I would think if you look at the course of the season so far, he's had the biggest character change. And yet the challenges of the show are that you can't, where he talks about that change, we have to show off, you have to talk about it. You can't show it, you have to talk about it, because you have to deal with so many characters.
Yeah.
Was that kind of frustrating to have? You want to make this change in this character, but you're kind of hamstrung by the conceit of the show that you can't delve into, you can't devote a whole episode to McRory's transformation.
Yeah, and that is a big thing. Again, like as I was saying, when we're figuring out the show and seeing what people respond to, and people want to know more about Rory and that change, and people want to know more about like Sarah and how she's reacting to things. That's something that we're really taking to heart season 2, about having people having these individual journeys and really kind of going into it. But especially with the Kronos thing, because it was such a big shift, we've always strived in like this episode and episodes going forward to just give him a little bit more of a tinge of just patience and understanding, because Heatwave was always the hothead, and he flies off the handle a lot of times, but since becoming Kronos, he spent lifetimes at the Vanishing Point, so he has a huge grasp of understanding of time travel. He has a huge grasp of just how people are going to react to certain situations. He still is who he's always going to be at his heart with the team, But especially in the episodes you're going to see in the next 3 weeks, we have definitely shaded him to be a much more, mature and, patient person. And that's something I think we're going to bring to the forefront in season 2. He's still always going to be McRory. He's still going to be always the wisecracker. He's going to be that person at his heart, because that's what the Time Masters couldn't take away from him. Because if they had extracted that, then he wouldn't be who he was, and he wouldn't be able to come back from being Kronos. So we like to always dance that line with him of like, one half is Kronos, one half is the Heat Wave that we've always loved. So.
And I feel like one other relationship I just want to touch on before we get talking about this episode is the Kendra Ray relationship. And certainly it's been very divisive. We talk about it here as well.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot.
Yes, and I'm sure it's on Twitter, and people are very divisive
Man,
about
we
it. Yes.
we love it.
Totally.
Oh, I
Best
totally
part of
buy
this
it.
show.
I feel great about it.
And how challenging it is for you, because you've set it up so much that Kendra and Carter are kind of destined to be soulmates forever. And I mean, and it seems like at every episode you're both trying to build them up and also tear them down constantly. And it seems like such a challenge to be able to have. I feel like audiences have a tough time investing in the Ray-Kendra relationship, knowing that, well, why should we? Because you keep constantly telling us that it's doomed to fail.
Yeah. It's interesting, kind of the line we've danced with the two of them, because originally we wanted it to feel kind of like a doomed romance.
Right.
But the thing about Ray Palmer always to remember is he is the unflinching optimist.
Yeah.
Even if you
adorable.
say, don't go down that dark alleyway, you're going to die, Ray's like, I brought a flashlight.
Yeah.
And things are going to be okay. And, audiences have really responded to that in the past. And, people who are fans of Ray Palmer have been cheering them on, every step of the way. And we've always kind of liked to tease that Carter's always in the background. Sometimes that tease has come off as a sledgehammer, I think.
Right.
So, going forward, we've definitely learned from that. But and it's no reflection on kind of the team and how they've played it, because I think Sierra and Brandon have an amazing chemistry together. They work really well together. But it's also, we're battling a mythology too of how do you stay true to the mythology of the Hawks and how they've always stayed together, and also keep Ray Palmer into that mix, which I love Brandon and I love Ray as a character. Sometimes I feel like he's doomed to be in the friend zone, and I'm just like, I just need to give that guy a win. I just please.
I feel so bad for him too, because he keeps trying to get with the girl who's destined for someone else, and it's just, dude.
Yeah, like
Your
Felicity
fiance
too.
dies,
Yeah.
Felicity leaves you. I'm just like, one day Ray's just gonna nail it, and he's gonna be the one like, is this real? Is this happening? Like, she likes me. No one's gonna take her away, right? We're getting married and we love one another.
See, and I think that's the reason I don't like the Ray and Kendra relationship is because I love Ray. Like, his eternal optimism. I mean, he's so much like Brandon's other show, Chuck. Like, he's very much the Chuck character. So you're, like, rooting for him to get the girl. But, like, with Kendra, it's like, that's not going to happen. So it's like they're doomed. And I'm like, I don't want Ray to be hurt.
I will say at the end, I think Ray is going to learn something from this relationship, whether he ends up with Kendra or whether he doesn't. I will not say either way. But, I think he is going to learn a lot from this, also about himself, which, we do in all our
I mean,
relationships.
he did just learn how to grow to 200 feet. So
That's
gotta,
the more you
help.
That helps with the ladies.
It helps with the ladies.
That's right.
Hey, ladies, I can grow to 200 feet.
I don't shrink anymore. I grow.
Yeah.
So, speaking of, we're talking about Ray growing. We're talking about this episode, Leviathan. How long did you have Ray turning into a giant-sized version of himself? How long was that just sitting in your back pocket, or was that just something that popped up? Like for this episode, it was just like, oh yeah, that's what he should do.
Right.
About a day. We were kind of just breaking the episode and figuring out what we wanted that big set piece to be. We knew we wanted Savage to have an ultimate weapon, and we weren't sure what that ultimate weapon was going to be. We just knew that it wanted to level towns, and what was something we hadn't seen before, and what was an escalation from weapons we had seen in the future. In episode 10, we saw that Ray's Atom suit was being used as kind of a militant police force, and we're like, okay, well, now let's go 20 years in the future. What would Savage have done with that technology? And then you slowly all turn to the giant idea board and you see Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Right.
And then we go, okay, could Ray grow? Because he can shrink. Like, could that work?
Right.
And then you go to Greg Berlanti, and that's one of those, Greg, sit down. I've got a pitch for you. Ray can shrink, but can he grow? And then Greg said yes, and we kind of went from there. So I'd like to say that, like, yes, we always had that plan. This was a big thought for the season. No, it was like a day.
Do you have trouble now that you've introduced the idea that he can grow to giant size and stomp on people? Is that going to be something like, do we make him grow again? No, we can't do that. But he can grow again. Is that something you now have to face, that having, like, that power now?
It's something we have to face with all our characters, in all honesty, because, I mean, in the second episode of the season, we saw Firestorm take a nuclear weapon,
Right.
blow it up, and then absorb the energy. And after you see someone with powers like that, you know, Jackson Stein getting, like, hit by a bad guy in a fight really doesn't have the same resonance. You
Yeah.
absorbed a nuke, dude. You know, like, step up your game. So going forward, we always like to say to ourselves, like, how can we take their powers to the next level? But also, like, what is the give and take? What makes them more vulnerable? Does growing take something away from Ray? You know, we always like to do that dance. So, I mean, going forward, we will say, okay, Ray has the ability to grow. He has the ability to shrink. Is there another ability he has? Is there something that he will lose as a person if he does both of these things? Like,
Right.
that's questions we ask about everything. But, you know, we'll figure it out.
One question I have with this episode, just because I thought when Rory suggested cutting off the fingers and then sending them to Vandal Savage,
I like that idea.
I thought to myself, yeah, they could do that because they could just grow a hand back.
Yeah, that's true.
Could they just...
We cut off her head, but we didn't mean it. Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. We grew it back, so it's fine.
That's true.
I'm just wondering if it made it onto the board. It was like, could we actually cut off the hand?
Cut off the hand? We only do that for people we like.
Oh, okay.
And at that point, we didn't
Fair
like
enough.
her.
All right.
But we very much like her now.
Yeah.
Could you guys put Malcolm's hand back, you know, from the Arrowverse, Malcolm Merlin? I mean, he did have Vandal's ashes.
Well,
so
he
is
doesn't have. They
showing
don't have the DNA of his on the ship. I
Yeah.
think that's.
You have to have a DNA profile
But
in
on the
order to
ship.
do it. I love that we
Yeah.
make up fake
Yeah.
science like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
time in the
that's
why I
room.
get it.
Like,
That's what you need to do.
the best part is when you start pitching
Yeah.
fake science to people and you're like, okay, so they're going to be traveling through time using tetrahedron particles, and you'll just see Mark and Phil go, wait, that part didn't make sense. None of it will make
Yeah.
sense.
It's time
all
travel. Don't think
fake.
about it too hard.
It's just like, I'm pitching you my fake rules.
Right.
And I'm just
as
going
you
up with new ones.
mentioned, it's one thing to write this episode and have this great fight between Ray and Leviathan, but then you've got to. It's not like we're doing one of the big fight scenes where everybody's involved and they're just doing hand-to-hand combat. This one is really heavily in the VFX department.
Yes.
How much have you learned in terms of working with the VFX department about like what's achievable on this sort of scale and this kind of budget in a 16-episode series?
A lot, because I mean, just in my experience as a producer and a writer, you know, I dealt with some VFX, but it's like a smoke cloud in the distance, and it's like that costs $500. We have entire meetings that are dedicated purely to VFX, where we just go through the script, and it just starts off with how much money we have to spend. What's it going to look like? What are the scenes it's going to feature most prominently, and how much bang we can get out of our buck in that moment? And luckily, we work with an amazing crew at Encore VFX. You know, our guys, especially in this episode, I'm just saying, submit it for an Emmy, because that giant robot was astounding.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know if it could be pulled out. Like, half the time when I write the script, we do the pie in the sky script, which is show the robot as much as possible, have this many fights, this many laser blasts, and then I turn it in, and then we have the meeting of what can actually be pulled off.
Right.
And they exceeded my expectations beyond all bounds. And, you know, you do get into the nitty-gritty of how much money it cost every time some like hot girl's wings come out. It's like, there's $12,000 on screen, everybody. Soak it up. Like,
That's what 12 grand looks like.
That's what $12,000. How many laser blasts does Rip get? We only get 6. Arthur, do not fire your gun more than 6 times, please. You know, you get down to the brass tacks of it, but you know, it all usually comes out okay in the end.
So is this a question like in this episode where you're like, all right, we want to have this great robot fight. It's going to be VFX heavy. That's a lot of money for that scene. So we're going to have to sideline Firestorm. We can't, because we can't have him merge. So we're going to injure Stein so that he's kind of out of pocket. So Jax is just helping Ray, but they're not going to merge Firestorm because that's just, we can't afford to show him in this particular episode.
Most of the time we like to let the story talk for it. Like we knew we wanted to tell the story of, you know, like what happens to Jax and Stein, you know, when Stein is injured and, you know, have the team having to take up the mantle of protecting the refugees. That it always comes from what their characters want, not necessarily how much money we have to spend. Because there have been times where, yes, we've had everybody involved in a firefight, and then someone say, we only have so much money, so can Firestorm flame on, and then we just don't see them for the rest of the fight. Like we've had those moments. We've had moments of like, okay, Snart can only fire his gun twice, so let's only feature him this much. And you know, we talk to Stunts about it, but it usually kind of all comes from character.
Well, it's also why it was a good move in the last episode where they all froze into action figure poses, because that was just perfect because you got to see everyone's kind of power, but they didn't have to move. So that must have been
expensive.
It was really expensive to just do that freezing thing?
Oh.
Yeah, because you had the 360.
360 coats are flying up.
Yeah.
People are frozen in motion, and you have to see like fireballs. Yeah, that was a really expensive shot.
It was worth it.
It was. It
was good.
It was Matt Mall's episode. He did fantastic. So, you know, you're welcome, Matt.
And it was interesting, if we're talking about Firestorm briefly, certainly Martin Stein, I mean, since he had already been introduced on The Flash, and Jax a little bit to set everything up, but certainly, I mean, you're Victor Garber as well, too, so you were already bringing a lot just along with you, just being Victor Garber. But it felt like Martin Stein was a little bit more focused on, a little bit more developed than Jax was until the last episode where he got a chance to maybe change his father's future, which we don't know if he's done yet or not, but it was nice to see Jax get a little bit of character development. So in terms of that, how has it been struggling like, oh, well, you know, we really haven't really focused on Jax a lot. We still got to make sure we kind of change, you know, have his character do some kind of journey through the course of the season.
Yeah, and we've spent a lot of time figuring out just what the dynamic is going to be between the two, because obviously there was another half of Firestorm. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen Flash season 1. Yeah,
The cute one.
Robbie Amell.
Yes.
And
the evil one in Earth 2.
yeah, get ready. It's
Evil
coming.
sexy.
It's coming. So we have tried to spend more time just exploring their dynamic, which another episode that I wrote, which was episode 4, which was White Knights, was kind of a big episode to talk about what their dynamic is as partners, as a father-son relationship. You know, Jax and Stein have that classic fight of, I'm the body, you're the mind, but if I take the hit, I die, and my mom won't get to see her son come home. And it was a great scene, and both the actors, just Franz and Victor, nailed it completely of how they feel about one another. And Victor was just the protective father in the moment, and Franz was, you know, the son who was lashing out at his dad. But, you know, when Stein is taken at the end, he realizes how much he needs to step up and how much that he just wants to protect him and how much he values having that voice in his head. And 105, which was written by Grani Godfrey and Beth Schwartz, that was one where, you know, he goes into the gulag, he gets Stein back, he pulls him out of Valentina Vostok because he says, like, we're actually Firestorm. And I think that was kind of the episode where we define, like, this is going to be the new Firestorm. This is the kid who can pull Stein out of anything. And, you know, I think we've done well about establishing. We still have, you know, a far way to go in exploring who the characters are. But we've been trying to make him just a very definitive new character in the canon. And, you know, Franz is doing great with it, and he is a huge comic book fan, so he knows, like, where to go with it, other influences bring into it. He always has great ideas, so we're really happy with him.
Yeah, I had a question about dealing with the whole canon that you guys have created, expanding from the Arrowverse and the Flashverse and all of that stuff. We're getting a lot of questions on the live chat asking, how is Sarah going to learn about Laura's death? We've spoiled it in previous episodes.
Yeah.
So, like,
She did.
Is that stuff that happens in the other universe, is that going to kind of filter into this one? Because we're jumping around time, so you could avoid it, but are you going to?
There are some tiny things in the different canons that are going on in the Flash world and in the Arrow world that will not hit our people, but something as huge as Laurel's death, like there is no other person more important to Sarah aside from her father and Oliver than her sister. This is the person who brought her back from the dead. So something as big as that, let's just say I have a feeling it's going to come back towards our team. So something that big will definitely have ripple effects of, how it affects the character, how it affects our journey. But smaller things we don't usually pay as much credence to.
Right. Also a question about Carter, bringing back Carter. And you guys knew you were going to bring back Carter at some point. Was there discussions about how you were going to bring him back, or are there different versions and this is the one you settled on, or was he always going to come back at this moment?
We knew he was going to come back at some point. The fact that they can reincarnate, again, that's a tool in our toolbox that we can always kind of call upon when we need it and when it was appropriate. Because other times we thought, like, okay, is this the moment that Carter comes back? And, going into the Ray-Kendra relationship, are they at a crossroads where this would become a little bit of a problem if your old boyfriend comes back when there's a ring on the finger, and what that means for our team, what that means for them as a couple. So we thought it was a very opportune moment in that instance. And also as we were drawing closer to the finale, we're just like, all right, like, when are we going to need to have both Hawks back? Because we had always had the intention that we wanted the whole gang back together kind of as we were getting towards the end. But we decided to pull the trigger kind of at this point because we were getting towards a couple episodes where it would have been useful to have two winged demigods on board.
Yeah, it's always good to get two winged demigods.
One's just not enough.
One's just not enough. You need two.
And for you, writing this episode and writing the earlier episodes, which characters just kind of easy for you to dial into? I mean, you certainly have praised Wentworth Miller. So is it Snart, when you're writing a Snart scene, is that just like the easiest one? It just flies off the fingertips? Or are there characters like, I got to do a little bit of work to be able to get into that character's head?
Usually, and I co-wrote this episode with Ray Uternichet, who is the sweetest, most awesome guy who he knows when it comes to villains. I love them. Like, if anyone has moral ambiguity, whether it's Rip, whether it's Snart, Heatwave, Sarah, because she's got a tinge of the assassin, Vandal Savage, and also, this was one of the episodes where I was fist pumping when I left the room, because from day one I was like, Vandal Savage has a daughter. Just saying, guys. Vandal Savage has a daughter. Who said that? Do we need to make her a character? And so those are the ones, like, I naturally always gravitate towards the villains. But, and also, I think, like, Rip has been an easier one for me to write because he's a little skewed. Anyone that's gray, I don't know whether it says too much about me that if someone is wholly good, that I'm just like, well, crap. How do I write Ray this week? Just like, you're just good and you're nice and you believe in humanity.
He's a freak.
I know, that's when I'm like, Ray, buddy, no coincidence, Ray Uternichet and Ray the character. Or I'm like, Ray, what would you do in this situation? Because I know what I would do. And I know what Snart would do. Take the money and run. So those are a little harder to dial into, but definitely, like, Wentworth comes out very easily. Rip, Vandal, all those ones are pretty quick,
Now, you're saying, you were mentioning the writers that Savage has a daughter. And certainly in the comic book universe, he's mentioned that he's had many descendants throughout the years. Yeah. Probably the most famous one, though, is probably Scandal Savage from the Secret Six.
Yes.
So was this, I mean, her, in this series, her name's Cassandra here in the episode. Was there any, say, like, oh, should we just call her Scandal, and a direct nod to that? Or was there like, no, we're not going to do that much of a touch to the... exact touching point?
Because there was a lot of debate going back and forth. Because Vandal Savage in the comic books, he has 2 daughters. One of them Scandal Savage, and one of them Cassandra, which appears much later on, and she's a mortal FBI investigator. And originally, we wanted to paint her as Scandal Savage, the one that we see and that goes on to kind of have her own canon. But because in this episode, she does kind of a 360 and turns good, we thought that was betraying the character of Scandal Savage, and that is something that you really want to save, like, you know, for whatever kind of comes down the line. But we said, can we take the best of Scandal Savage and the best of Cassandra and kind of mold it into this one person and go our own road with it? And DC was very generous in saying, yes, please do so. So we were able to kind of form our own character. And Jessica Sipos, who played her, I think, knocked it out of the park, did things with it, added nuances to it that really kind of made it sing. So we were lucky in that respect. But.
Just one quick question about the DC canon there. Certainly Ray Palmer, I love the character, but he's never had like an Iron Man power suit, but at least in the comics. So how is that something that's brought up in the realm? It's like, why does Ray have the power suit? Why doesn't he just be the Atom and just be cool and he just shrinks and he travels through phone lines and he does all this cool stuff? And he just shrinks a lot. Or it's like, oh no, the power suit is great. It really adds an extra dimension or something for him to be more active in scenes, in fights, things like that.
Mm-hmm. We try and stick with the comic books and pull inspiration where it comes, and like we've literally opened up comic books, threw them down, and like that cell right there, that's a scene from our show. Right. Let's do that. So we pick and choose what we think is best, kind of in the moment and in the time, but we do veer away from it, and a lot of times, again, we love to give service to the comic books, and we love to give service to our fans who adore them, but we are still trying to like form Ray Palmer into a character that's very independent and is just of the Legends of Tomorrow universe. So hopefully, you know, in the season and the next seasons going forward, we'll just kind of add to that mythology. It's kind of like when any character is reinvented, you know, the Batman of the classic comics and Batman Begins, 2 very different things. Yeah. So we're just kind of trying to continue the evolution as best we can, and that's usually our governing principle going forward.
Yeah, and it seems like you pay it off, at least with that little wrinkle of making it a suit, because now we have robots that are based off of the suits and are now evil and giant, and always have the Atom symbol on it, which is gotta be like...
It's like a big F you from Vandal Savage.
Yeah,
like, yeah, Ray, just take
like,
that.
couldn't you just take the Atom off?
Come on, man.
Oh, man.
Lacretia, are there any more questions right there in the chat?
Yeah, we have a few really good ones here. A lot of people are wondering about Patrick J. Adams' character. I mean, it's been a big spoiler that he is coming to the show. Can you give any hints? I know.
Yeah, we got a lot of hints about future characters.
Yes.
There's a lot of people, my own friends included, my brother included, that like text me and are just like, is it this person? Like they'll just name superheroes like up the top of their heads, and I'm just like, not gonna answer either way. But I will say, he's someone that you're going to see literally in the last minute. So you kind of have to stick around. He is a man who is going to come in the last moment kind of our finale. So you will definitely know by the end of this season who he is. So, but, and he is someone that is definitely going to play a very large part in what we do in season 2, kind of the missions that we're going to go on. Right. So you will have a very good idea going forward, and he's definitely a guy who has insight that our team does not by the end. So
well, dealing with that, it's certainly when the series was first announced, the idea was that it was going to be kind of an anthology series. So like each season would be kind of different, maybe with different characters. So certainly without spoiling anything, you've already been kind of talking about second season and allusion to some of the characters. So is it pretty much safe to say that some of these characters from this season are going to be also featured heavily in the next season as well?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Cool, and I have a 2-part question, and this one's just for me, and I'm going to say his name, but I have a fetish for brown coat wearing dudes. So 2 things. Is John Constantine ever going to be a part of this, and could Nathan Fillion play Booster Gold?
Okay. Let's just address some situations here. All right. To get Constantine, we had to pull in some calls.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying we'll never see him again, I'm just saying, we flexed a lot of muscle to get him on Arrow. But he was a fan favorite, I will say. And the more people talk about it, the more people want to see something like that, then absolutely we try and deliver what people want. As for Mr. Booster Gold, DC has some plans for Booster Golds.
With Nathan, I hope.
And I don't know if they have spoken to Nathan. We met at Comic-Con, had a rousing game of ping pong. I feel like we're friends.
All right, now you're just bragging.
Name drop. But I will say, they have big plans for Booster Gold that might extend beyond our television show. So if you do not see him on this show, you will see him at some point, and hopefully Mr. Fillion will play him, because, who doesn't love Nathan Fillion?
And that's awesome. I'll offer you guys, just like I offered Joe Henderson earlier, I can provide some Constantine fanfic if you need writing.
Right.
Yeah. Said to him earlier, you need Constantine. I got
All right.
If there is a slow day in the room, I will bring up /fic. And everyone has to take a role. Who does the best Captain Cold? Because mine's pretty good.
I got a question about the future season. Are we going to stay, since it's going to be a little different, are we going to stay in the same world of time travel, or is it going to become something else?
I will say the world is going to probably become a lot bigger.
Oh boy.
Oh, and then I got some ideas about who this Patrick J. Adams is then. Absolutely. With that, all right, so we got to get ready to wrap up this episode. So we're going to do ultra super fast predictions.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Lacretia, super fast prediction.
Well, I predict that Patrick J. Adams is going to be a part of the Legion of Superheroes, maybe, that they keep throwing out there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And maybe we might be going to space more. That's how it's bigger.
Yeah, I'm thinking Adam Strange. That's who I'm going to throw
that's
out
a good
for.
one. That's a good one.
Yes. So look at that. That's what we're going to think about doing. Before we got a couple minutes here to wrap it. Oh, we got a tiny bit more time. Look at that, because everybody loves Sarah Nicole Jones. We're getting a little extension. We got a couple extra minutes. Quick, do we have a fan question right there?
Let's see.
Oh, we got a question about, we are going to see a Flash crossover at some point, right? Or is it not a definite? Is it a maybe? Because we've been hearing about maybe having an older Barry at some point.
Oh, she cannot
confirm nor
I
deny
cannot
things.
confirm nor deny anything. All I can say is Grant Gustin is a very, very busy man.
Yes.
Right,
And
okay.
so is Stephen Amell. We definitely try and have as much crossover in all the Berlanti universes as possible, because everyone loves seeing that. It often comes down to just time on all of these shows, how much the actors have. There's a lot of moving parts that do that. We definitely have crossovers planned in the future, and we're going to try and deliver them as much as we can. But, if it doesn't come immediately, don't think that it's never going to happen.
Okay.
It will, I promise.
Okay.
I guess we have one last question, just for you personally, Sarah. Just during the course of doing this season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow, what have you learned in terms of doing the show? How what's worked for you? What's changed in your opinions of doing the show, and something that's so big in scope and so many characters?
Wow. It's definitely taught me that there are no bad ideas. And that we definitely just listen to everybody involved, because when you have a huge ensemble, our actors are so fantastic and they bring so much to their roles, and they're there in the trenches, same as our crew, and they usually have great stuff to bring on board and to take back to the room. So that's been kind of the biggest thing going forward, is that no one is the ultimate authority on everything. Like, there have been fans that have put forward ideas. There have been other writers, actors, crew members, everyone to listen to. And that's the greatest thing about working on a superhero show, because it speaks to so many people, and a lot of people have great ideas, and it kind of forms them all together. So that sense of community has been the biggest thing to learn.
So everybody, both in front and behind the camera, are a real legend of tomorrow. That's great, everybody. Holy cow.
We got to end on that.
That's right, folks. That's going to do it for for this episode of Legends of Tomorrow After Show. But if you want to continue the conversation, like us on Facebook, give us those sweet 5 stars on iTunes, follow us on Twitter, continue the conversation on there. Lacretia, if they want to continue the conversation, where can they find you?
You can find me at LACRETIALYON anywhere online.
You can find me at Mr. Dave Child.
Ooh, look at that. Sarah?
Simple.
SNJONESY3 at Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else.
And you can follow me at HappyGoJackie. Thanks so much for watching, folks. We'll see you next week with another episode of Legends of Tomorrow here on AfterBuzz TV.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.